You mentioned in the book that we're in this unprecedented experiment. We're in an unprecedented experiment, launching this product into a market of humans, and we're testing in real time what happens to both adults and children. What are the first signs that we might be able to notice in our own kids? You mentioned some already. What are some other signs that we might be able to notice in our kids or maybe ourselves that this experiment's not going very well?
Yeah, I think the doom scrolling's a big one, right? Which we talked about earlier. I think if you or your kids are spending a lot of time just looking at cat videos, right? Nonsense, right? Then you really need to have a think about how can we actually restrict this. Also, a lot of teens and even adults, right, will get very stressed when their phone's almost out of batteries. I mean, if that's happening, then yeah, you've got a problem, right? Because what does it matter if your phone actually runs out of batteries? You plug it in, and then a couple of hours later, you can see what texts you missed. And if you're actually spending more time online than you are with real people, then again, you've got a problem in your social life. Obviously, we all spend a lot of time on screens, or many of us do at work. But in your social life, if you're spending more time on screens than you are in your social life, then you've got a problem. You need to be spending time with people because that's what makes us. That's what really makes us who we are as humans, right? And so that's what we should be doing. I think there's some really key things that we need to be looking at. And I always find it funny because a lot of parents will say to me, oh, it's really sad. I can't. How do I get my child out of the bedroom? And when I was a kid, the worst thing a parent could do was send you to your bedroom, right? We'd be in tears if they said.
Yeah.
And now we're talking about how do we get them out of their bedrooms. So to me, number one is no devices in bedrooms, right? And what we do at home is we'll have all the devices. Our phones all go in one area. And if you want to use your phone, you've got to use it like we used to use it, and it's connected to the wall. And you have to go and stand there because it's not very pleasant to stand there, right? And so you only do what you need to do because you're actually standing there. And we all do that, right? And we don't need devices when we're having dinner.
Yeah.
We need to break bread together and
Yeah.
look at each other and spend time with each other. So
There's a reason.
meals together, those things are really important.
You mentioned break bread. There's a reason that these things are codified in traditions and cultures and religions all over the world because the people that did that survived longer. Like, what's going on with that family? They seem to be really healthy and really well, but my family, who never really see each other, we're all sick and shitty. What if we met every weekend on a particular day and ate together? That's good. Let's just write that in there. Break bread. That's good. Put that in there, guys, so we don't forget it. Let's sing a song about it. And that's why it's there. Yeah. That's why it's not because some magical sky dad said do this or you burn. It happened because people noticed that those who did it stayed alive longer. It's the same with eating pork and stuff, but whatever. And anyone would be familiar with if you've ever been fit for a while, gone on holidays, and then come back and done a first exercise class again. After 3 weeks or 2 weeks of lying around by a pool, that first class is like, I might need another lung. This is terrible. Like, you use it or you lose it. Your body will decondition. In the book, you talk about a very, very famous study of London taxi drivers before GPS. London taxi drivers had an enlarged posterior, the hippocampus, the memory part, the part of my brain that was turned off the night I went to see Pee Wee Herman. Much larger because London's a rabbit warren, but they call it the knowledge. I met a woman whose dad, I said, did he have the knowledge? He goes, oh, he had the knowledge. Yeah, he had the knowledge.
It's a big thing.
It's a huge thing. They would be able to remember the entire London street map. But then when they retired, they couldn't do it anymore. And that part of their brain had shrunk again. What happens? What parts of our brain? Let's get people frightened. What happens to our kids' brains? What parts of our brains aren't getting big enough when they're on the screen all the time? And what can we do about that?
Yeah, the parahippocampal place area is actually a really interesting one because that's the area where we have all our maps and everything, and that's the one that they originally found, got bigger in London taxi drivers. And we know that if you use those Wayfinder apps like Google Maps all the time when you go in places, that's smaller in most people. But they've also found that because that area is actually connected to your hippocampus, which is where all your episodic memory is, which is you remembering Pee Wee Herman event, is that we actually link how we get to places with what we actually do when we get there. So if you use a Wayfinder app to get somewhere, you actually remember less about what you do when you get there because you've got nothing to link it to. And so we don't remember what we did when we get there because we use the Wayfinder app to get there. because you can't activate your parahippocampal place area, because the way the maps work is they twist around, whereas the maps in our brain are all set based on north, south, east, and west. And so
they're relational to our environment.
To our environment, yeah, exactly. And so we know that both of those areas are decreasing, and we don't have as much knowledge. And they've even done it with students. They've done it with college students in the US. So they all move around when they go to college, and so they don't know the campus very well, and they give half of them a Wayfinder app on their phone, or they give half of them a map. And after 6 months, they show that the students don't know their way as well around if they're using the device. They don't have as many friends, so they don't have many connections at the college after the 6 month period. And their SAT scores are lower because they don't remember what they're actually learning in their classes because they're using a Wayfinder app to get to their classes. So the two things actually link up with each other. So there's all these extra things, that we don't think about, all right, until we actually find the data for it. Nobody would have expected that until we actually started researching it and going, oh, wow, these two things are actually linked. And there's a really important reason why we have both of those things. But then you think about it, you think, well, parahippocampal place area is here, and then the hippocampus is wrapped around it like this. So it sort of makes sense. That's why it evolved, so that they could actually link up with each other.
So, I mean, I did notice something like this when I was shooting a TV show, Bachelor, the mansion where we would base it from was always far away. And it was in a semi-rural part of Sydney, lots of twisty-turny little dirt roady things. And one particularly difficult one to find, I noticed after a couple of weeks there, it's like, I actually don't know how to get here. And that's weird because I've been driving here every day for 3 weeks. Yeah. And I found it very challenging. Now, but this is 2016. So I had been driving using GPS for 5 years by this point because I got my iPhone in 2010. And I really struggled at first. I really, really struggled trying to figure out which way do I go. But now, since I've got my motorbike license, I can't have a phone on my bike. I don't want to be looking. I see guys with it. They texting.
It's crazy.
They're delivering pad tires and stuff. Like I don't know about that.
No way.
And I've found it to be far more. It's very interesting. So, is that a challenge that we could give to people? Is like somewhere you go all the time, just try not to have your maps on.
Yeah. Well, what I do is I look it up before I go. Because you always want to know how long it's going to take you to get there, right? And so I look up how to get there before I go, and I'll write down a few notes as to how to get there. And then I'll try and get there without actually using the anything. Wow. Because it's also distracting, right? Because you're also looking down at it constantly to work out where you're going. Whereas if it's in your head, then you can actually, and you know the signposts that you need to actually turn.
Because not only are we growing that part of our brain, we are increasing our ability to remember what happened when we got there.
When you get there. Exactly.
Far out, man. Yeah. That is...
And we've seen that in the results from the IQ tests, right? Because IQ tests... We had what's called the Flynn effect, where IQ tests started, 150 years ago. And we...
Let me guess. Flynn found it.
Flynn found this.
Got to name stuff after yourself.
Got to name it after yourself.
Everyone remembers.
Not allowed to these days. No one will let you do that anymore.
Really? Who was the last one?
I don't know. Actually, I should look that up.
Pavlov really got right in there. So did Mr. Fahrenheit. But
Yeah, no, they don't do it.
No, Asperger. Can't talk about him because he was a terrible Nazi. But we don't give a fuck about what Pavlov said.
Pavlov's fine.
He might have been a terrible person.
Yeah.
So you can't. Fuck, man. You can't name any. What was his name? I had him on the show. Paxinos was on the show.
Oh,
so Paxinos couldn't have named anything after himself.
No,
bugger.
Not allowed. I think you're allowed, but everyone, it's shunned these days. But so we because of that, the IQ test basically has a 100%. 100 is the average. So your 100 has to be your average of the population. So every 5 years or so, they test a big group of people and they adjust it because we found that every year. Or every time they tested it, the IQ was getting greater. And so they had to make it a little harder. You had to adjust it accordingly. And that's a Flynn effect, that our IQs are getting higher because more people are getting educated and because of nutrition and all those sorts of things. Except for the last 10 years, when our IQ's actually been general population has been getting dumber.
Can we call that the Zuckerberg effect?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, that's a good idea.
We're going to make a special exception for you, Zuck.
Yeah. So we are getting dumber as a population.
Get out
of
here.
Which is really sad.